I still remember the sound before the truth hit me, the quiet ping of a message notification. It wasn't mine. It came from Emily's phone, face down on the counter, while she was upstairs putting me to bed. I shouldn't have looked. God knows, if I hadn't, maybe I'd still be living in that illusion of a perfect marriage. But curiosity, they say, is just the first spark before everything burns. We'd been married 17 years. 17 years of shared mornings, lazy Sunday breakfasts, arguments over whose turn it was to take the bins out, and nights where she fell asleep on my chest after telling me she loved me. Real love, or so I thought. The kind that grows through routine, through knowing someone's laugh and the way they stir their coffee. I was just cleaning up the kitchen when the phone lit up. Can't stop thinking about last night. That's all it said. I froze. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a wrong number, maybe a co-worker's harmless joke. But then it buzzed again, like fate pressing its hand against my chest. You looked amazing when you left. Same time next week. The blood drained from my face. My hands went numb. I stared at that screen like it was a live grenade. Emily, my Emily, the woman who still kissed me before work. The woman who made tea when I couldn't sleep. The woman who whispered, "You're my home." I wanted to believe there was some explanation. There had to be. Maybe it was someone from her office being inappropriate. Maybe she was confronting him, and I was about to misread everything. That's what my brain told me, trying desperately to protect me from what my heart already knew. Then I saw the name. Daniel's speech balloon. I'd met him before, one of her colleagues from the firm she joined last year. He was charming, smooth, and always a little too quick to make her laugh. I remember thinking he was harmless, just the kind of guy who flirts with everyone. When Emily came downstairs a few minutes later, I was still staring at her phone, screen glowing like an open wound. She froze at the sight of me holding it. For a moment, we both just stood there, the air between us so heavy it felt like it might collapse. "Who's Daniel?" I asked. Her face changed instantly. First confusion, then fear, then something that looked an awful lot like guilt. "It's not what you think," she said quietly, voice trembling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone. But all that came out was a whisper. "Then what is it?" Silence. She looked down, tears welling up, and that's when I knew. The truth wasn't a blade. It was a slow, twisting knife. "I made a mistake," she said. It's strange how the world can fall apart in a single sentence. I walked out of the house that night. I didn't slam the door, didn't shout. I just left. The air outside was cold, sharp enough to bite. I stood on the front porch, staring at the lights of our living room glowing through the curtains, thinking about every moment that had led up to this. The night we met at a university party. The vows we exchanged under a white archway in Devon. The birth of our daughter, Mia, 8 years ago. How Emily cried when she held her for the first time. All of it suddenly felt fragile, like a film reel unraveling. When I finally came back in, she was sitting on the couch, her phone on the table, eyes red and swollen. "I ended it," she said. "It was only a few weeks. I don't even know why I did it. I was lonely and stupid and—" "Lonely?" I snapped. "You have me. You have our daughter. What more could you possibly need?" Her voice broke. "You've been distant, Tom. Ever since you lost your job last year. It's like you're here but not here. I just needed to feel something again." That was her excuse. That was a reason she shattered 17 years of trust. Because I'd been distant. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stared at her, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, and realized I didn't know her at all. That night, I slept in the guest room. I could hear her crying through the walls, muffled and broken. But I didn't go to her. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages flashing behind my eyelids. Can't stop thinking about last night. Same time next week. Over and over, like a curse. And just like that, the foundation of my life, everything I thought was solid, began to crack. The days after the discovery blurred together, a hollow routine of pretending everything was fine. Emily slept in our bed again after 3 nights of silence. I didn't stop her. I didn't forgive her either. I just couldn't keep sleeping on that cold guest room mattress. staring at the ceiling, listening to the tick of the clock that somehow sounded louder now. She cooked breakfast like nothing happened, packed Mia's lunch, kissed her goodbye at the door. Every gesture rehearsed, normal, except nothing was normal anymore. Every time she smiled, I wondered who she'd smiled like that for before. Every time she touched my hand, I felt the ghost of someone else's fingers. I tried to move on. I really did. We started marriage counseling, some beige office where a woman with calm eyes asked about our communication patterns. I sat there with my arms folded, nodding while Emily talked about reconnecting and healing. Healing. What a ridiculous word. You don't heal from a knife wound by pretending it didn't happen. Still, I stayed. Not out of forgiveness. Not even out of love, if I'm honest. I stayed because of Mia. She was 8, curious, funny, with those wild curls and a laugh that filled the house like sunlight. She deserved a family that didn't fall apart. So, I smiled at dinner. I helped with homework. I let Emily hold my hand in public. But at night, when she fell asleep, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever feel the same again. Then one morning, about a month later, everything shifted again. I woke to the sound of Emily vomiting in the bathroom. At first, I thought it was food poisoning. She came out pale, trembling, clutching the sink like it was holding her up. "I'm fine," she said weakly, brushing past me, but her hand was shaking. A few days later, I found the test in the bin. 2 pink lines. My heart stopped. She hadn't told me. Not a word. I confronted her that evening, my hands trembling so bad I almost dropped the stick when I held it up. "When were you going to tell me?" Her eyes went wide. She looked terrified, not surprised. Terrified. "I was going to," she said softly. I wasn't sure yet." "Sure about what?" "About," her voice broke, "whose it is." That's when the floor disappeared beneath me. I can't describe the sound I made. Half laugh, half sob. It felt like my chest was collapsing. I turned away from her, my hands in my hair, every muscle screaming for me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. She kept talking, words tumbling out through tears. It was only a few times. "Tom, it might be yours. I want it to be yours. I swear to God, I'll do a test, whatever you want. Just please, please don't leave." I didn't answer. I couldn't even look at her. The next few weeks were a blur of silence. She made appointments. I avoided her eyes. Mia asked why we were quiet, and Emily would smile and say, "Daddy's just tired." I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of hoping. Tired of bleeding silently. When the results came back, I was in the living room, holding a mug of coffee gone cold. Emily came in, envelope shaking in her hands. She didn't have to open it. I could see it on her face. It's his, she whispered. Something inside me broke completely then. Not shattered, just crumbled, like old stone. I set the cup down carefully so I wouldn't throw it. "Get out," I said quietly. "Tom." I said, "Get out." She started sobbing, reaching for me. "Please don't do this. I'll raise it alone. I'll move out for now if that's what you want, but please don't end us like this." I didn't move. I just watched as she packed a bag that night. She kissed me a goodbye while she slept, then stood in the doorway looking at me one last time. "I'm sorry," she said. "I never stopped loving you." And just like that, she was gone. The next morning, I told Mia that Mom needed to go away for a while to work things out. She nodded slowly, eyes confused but trusting. Kids believe what they need to believe. For the first time in years, the house was silent. But it wasn't peaceful. It was haunted. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like her footsteps. Every faint smell of her perfume clung to the air like a ghost refusing to leave. Weeks turned into months. I saw Emily a few times when she came by from Mia. Her belly began to show, a soft curve beneath her sweater. I avoided looking at it, because every time I did, the thought hit me like a hammer. That should have been mine. Still, I never stopped loving her. And that was the cruelest part of all. I told myself I wouldn't go to the hospital. When Emily's mother called to say she'd gone into labor, I hung up without a word. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the carpet for what felt like hours. My hands kept tightening into fists, nails biting into my palms. I wasn't that child's father. I wasn't supposed to feel anything. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's face, the way she'd looked the night she confessed, trembling and broken, and I thought about the years before all of this. The laughter, the small things, the 17 Christmases. By the time I realized where I was going, I was already halfway to the hospital. The waiting room was sterile and too bright, filled with a faint antiseptic smell that always reminded me of endings. Emily's mother was there, her eyes red from crying. She didn't say anything, just reached out and touched my hand. "She's been asking for you," she whispered. I didn't want to go in. Every step down that hallway felt like walking into a place I didn't belong anymore. When I reached the door, I paused, hand hovering over the handle. Then I heard her voice, weak and trembling. "Tom." She looked small in that hospital bed, her hair plastered to her forehead, her face pale. And in her arms was a baby, tiny, wrapped in a pink blanket. I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at the child who was proof of everything I'd lost. "Do you want to hold her?" Emily asked quietly. I almost said no. I almost turned and left. But then the baby made a soft noise, a little sigh, barely there, and something in me cracked open. I stepped closer, took her carefully from Emily's arms. She was so light, so fragile. Her skin smelled like milk and something impossibly pure. When she opened her eyes, blue, like mine, I forgot how to breathe. "She looks like you," Emily whispered. It didn't matter if it was true or not. In that moment, I wanted it to be. I stood there holding the baby, my heart a mess of contradictions, love, anger, grief, longing, all tangled up in something too complicated to name. I wanted to hate her for existing, but all I could feel was an overwhelming sense of something. Not love, not yet, but the shadow of it. "What are you going to name her?" I asked, my voice rough. "Maya," she said. "It means illusion." I almost laughed at that. How fitting. I left before she was discharged. I told Emily I couldn't be part of this. Not now. She nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I understand," she whispered, but I didn't understand anything. The weeks that followed were torture. Every time Mia came home from visiting her mother, she'd talk about the baby, how tiny she was, how she smiled when Mia sang to her. "Daddy, you should come see her," she'd say. "She's really cute. She looks like Mommy, but kinda like you too." That last part hurt the most. One night, after I put Mia to bed, I sat in the dark living room with a bottle of whiskey. The silence was unbearable. I thought about the hospital, about the warmth of that baby in my arms, about how something that began in betrayal could still feel so innocent. I don't remember making the decision. I just remember driving. When I pulled up to Emily's new apartment, it was raining. She answered the door in her robe, looking shocked to see me there. Maya was sleeping in her arms. "I didn't think you'd ever come," she said softly. "I just wanted to see her," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. She nodded and stepped aside. The apartment was small, quiet. There were toys scattered across the floor, a bassinet by the window. Maya stirred, her tiny face scrunching up, and I felt something twist in my chest. Emily looked at me carefully. "You can hold her if you want." I sat down on the couch, and she placed the baby in my arms again. This time, there was no hesitation. Maya blinked sleepily, yawned, and then, "God help me," smiled. A small, fluttering smile that undid me completely. I broke down, right there, holding her. All the pain, all the anger, all the confusion, gone, at least for that moment. I cried until my chest hurt, while Maya slept peacefully in my arms. Emily knelt beside me, crying too. "I'm sorry," she whispered again and again. I didn't answer. I just kept holding the child I swore I wouldn't love. Because somehow, despite everything, she already felt like mine. After that night, I started visiting Maya every weekend. I told myself it was for Mia's sake, so she could spend time with her little sister. But that was a lie, and I knew it. It was for me. Every time I saw Maya, something inside me softened. She'd reach for my finger with that tiny hand, or fall asleep against my chest, and all the walls I'd built cracked just a little more. She didn't ask for any of this. She didn't know the world she was born into were broken. Emily noticed, of course. She never said it outright, but I could see the way her eyes followed me when I held Maya, the faint flicker of hope she tried to hide. One Saturday afternoon, I stayed longer than usual. Mia was busy building a Lego castle on the floor, humming to herself, while Emily made tea in the kitchen. "Do you want sugar?" she asked. I nodded, and she smiled faintly, the kind of smile that once meant everything to me. It startled me how familiar it felt, how easily my chest tightened at something so small. We sat at the kitchen table, Maya sleeping in her cot nearby. The silence between us wasn't hostile anymore. It was heavy, but not cruel. "Thank you for coming," she said finally. "I know you don't have to." I stayed into my cup. She's part of Mia's life. That makes her part of mine. Emily's eyes softened. "You've always been a good man, Tom. Better than I deserved." I didn't know what to say to that. The words lodged somewhere deep in my throat. When I finally looked up, she was watching me, really watching me. For a heartbeat, it felt like the old days, the way she used to look at me before everything went wrong. I should have looked away. Instead, I didn't. "Do you ever think about us?" I asked quietly. She exhaled shakily. "Every day." Her eyes filled with tears, and something in me shifted. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly. It was a recognition of how small and human we both were, how easily love turns into pain, and pain into something that almost feels like love again. She reached across the table, fingers trembling, and for a moment I let her hold my hand. Her skin was warm, familiar. The same hand I'd held at our wedding, the same one that had held mine when Mia was born. "I wish I could undo it," she whispered. "So do I," I said. The moment hung there between us, fragile as glass. I pulled my hand back before it shattered. "I can't go back, Emily," I said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." She nodded, tears falling freely now. "I know." That night, when I got home, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that look in her eyes, the sorrow, the longing, the quiet acceptance that maybe some things can't be fixed no matter how badly you want them to be. But the strange thing was, I didn't feel hatred anymore. I didn't even feel anger. Just an ache that ran deep and quiet, like an old scar that never fully heals. Over the next few months, my visit became a rhythm. Saturday mornings at her place. Coffee, small talk, watching Maya grow. She started crawling, then babbling. Every milestone hit me harder than I expected. One afternoon, I brought a small stuffed bear for Maya. She grabbed it with both hands, grinning. Emily smiled softly. "She loves it," she said. "She's got good taste." I joked. Emily laughed, and the sound filled the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. I hadn't heard her laugh like that in years. Something inside me stirred, a dangerous kind of hope. But forgiveness, I was learning, isn't a single moment. It's a long road full of detours. And sometimes, even when you want to forgive, the past refuses to stay buried. Because one evening, when I dropped by unannounced, I found Daniel's car parked outside her apartment. My heart sank. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, staring at that familiar license plate. The same man whose name had destroyed everything. Part of me wanted to walk away. Another part, the raw, wounded part, wanted to storm inside. Instead, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I watched the lights go off in her living room. My breath came in shallow bursts, the kind you get when your mind starts inventing every possibility at once. When Daniel finally came out an hour later, he didn't look guilty. He just looked tired. He got into his car and drove off without even looking around. I waited another minute, then went inside. Emily opened the door, surprised. Her face was flushed, her hair messy. "Tom, what are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I just looked past her at the toys scattered across the floor, the half-empty mug on the counter, the faint sound of Maya crying in the next room. "I thought we agreed to be honest," I said finally. Her face fell. "It's not what you think." Those same words. Again. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. "He came to see Maya," she said. "He wanted to meet his daughter." The words hit like a gut punch. I didn't turn around. I just said quietly, she's not his daughter. And I walked out into the rain, knowing full well that what I'd said wasn't true. Not by blood, but maybe by something deeper. I didn't go back to Emily's apartment for 2 weeks after that night. Not because I didn't want to see Maya. I miss her more than I could admit. But because I couldn't stomach the thought of Daniel being there. The idea of him holding her, the same way I did, made something dark twist in my chest. Mia noticed my mood. Kids always do. She'd ask, "Daddy, are you mad at Mommy again?" And I'd tell her no, that adults just get confused sometimes. It wasn't a lie. Confusion had become my daily state of existence. When I finally did go back, it was a quiet Sunday morning. Emily looked surprised when she opened the door. Not angry, not even wary, just surprised, like she wasn't sure I'd ever come again. "She's in her crib," she said softly. "She's been saying day. That word hit me like a freight train. I stepped past her and went to the crib. Maya looked up, her blue eyes wide, her tiny hands reaching out. She said it again, day. I froze. I knew she didn't understand what the word meant. But God, it broke me. Emily stood behind me, her voice trembling. She only says it when she sees you. I picked Maya up, holding her against my chest. She giggled, tugging at my shirt collar, and in that moment, I realized how cruel love can be, because it doesn't care about logic or blood or betrayal. It just grows wherever it wants. We started seeing more of each other after that. Not as husband and wife, not even as friends. Just two broken people orbiting around the same tiny sun. Some weekends, we'd all go to the park. Me, Emily, Mia, and Maya. To anyone watching, we looked like a normal family. We even fooled ourselves sometimes. But underneath it all, there was tension. The kind that hums quietly, waiting to explode. One afternoon, as we watched the girls on the swings, Emily said, "Daniel doesn't come around anymore." I didn't respond. "I told him it's better this way," she continued. "He said he understands. He's not ready to be a father." Something in me relaxed, even though I knew I shouldn't feel relieved. Emily turned to me, her eyes searching. "Does it make you hate me less?" I didn't look at her. "I don't hate you, Emily. That's a problem." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then what do you feel?" I hesitated, tired, lost, like I'm still standing in the wreckage of something that used to be beautiful. She nodded slowly. "Me too." For a long time, we sat there in silence, the sound of the swing squeaking in rhythm with the wind. Maya laughed from the slide, and Mia shouted, "Look, Daddy, she's not scared anymore." I smiled, but it felt like someone else's face. Later that night, after I dropped me off at home, I sat in my car outside Emily's apartment. The lights were still on. I could see her silhouette moving through the curtains, rocking Maya, maybe singing to her. For a brief, foolish second, I imagined knocking on that door, walking in, and pretending we were still a family. Pretending none of this ever happened. But pretending doesn't heal anything. It only delays the pain. So instead, I drove away. Halfway home, it started to rain. The kind of slow, steady rain that makes the world blur outside your windshield. And somewhere between one stoplight and the next, I realized something. I loved Maya, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but as a person. She was the only innocent thing left in this mess, and I couldn't abandon her, even if it meant carrying this heartbreak forever. Weeks passed. Emily and I found a strange rhythm, coexisting in the space between forgiveness and regret. I'd come by after work, read to the girls, help with dinner. Then I'd leave before bedtime. It wasn't love, not anymore, but it wasn't nothing either. One night, as I was leaving, Emily stopped me at the door. "Tom," she said quietly, "do you think we could ever try again?" I turned to her, the weight of her question pressing down on me. Her eyes were full of hope, but also fear, like she already knew my answer. "I don't know," I said finally. "I want to, but I don't know if I can trust us anymore." She nodded slowly, biting her lip. "That's fair." And then she said something I'll never forget. "Even if we never find our way back, I want you to know you're the best thing that ever happened to her. To both of them." I left without replying, because if I did, I might have said something I couldn't take back. That night, I dreamed of our old house, the one with the oak tree in the backyard and the creaky stairs Mia used to race up. In the dream, Emily was there, holding Maya, smiling the way she used to. When I woke, the house was silent again. And that's when I understood, sometimes love doesn't die. It just lives in the wrong place, waiting for a moment that never comes. The first snow came early that year, thick flakes drifting across the gray sky, soft enough to hide the mess beneath. Mia was at her grandmother's for the weekend, so it was just me, Emily, and Maya. The apartment felt quiet, too quiet, except for the hum of the heater and Maya's soft babbling on the living room rug. Emily sat on the couch, her laptop open but untouched. She looked tired, paler than usual. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, then shook her head. "I've been dizzy lately, and the doctor says it's stress." I looked at her, really looked at her. There were faint circles under her eyes, a kind of fragile sadness in the way she moved. "Stress doesn't make you this pale," I said softly. "You need rest." She gave a weak laugh. "You sound like you still care." "I do." The words slipped out before I could stop them. For a second, something flickered between us, something almost like the past. But it faded as quickly as it came. That night, after Maya fell asleep, we sat in silence. Emily stared out the window, her reflection framed by falling snow. "I'm trying, Tom," she whispered, "to fix what I broke. But it feels like no matter what I do, it's not enough." I didn't answer right away. My throat felt tight. "Maybe," I said finally, "some things aren't meant to be fixed. Maybe we just have to carry them." She turned to me, eyes glistening. "And you're still here, carrying me anyway." I didn't know what to say, so I just reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. The next few weeks blurred together. I spent more time at Emily's, helping with the baby, fixing things around the apartment, cooking dinner. It wasn't romantic, but it was familiar, and that familiarity felt like oxygen after so much chaos. Then, one night, the phone rang. It was her sister. I could tell from Emily's face that something was wrong. After she hung up, she said quietly, "Mom's in the hospital. Stroke." I drove her there, stayed in the waiting room all night while she sat by her mother's bedside. Maya was with me, asleep in my arms. I remember thinking how strange it was, holding a child who wasn't mine while the woman I once loved cried for the parent she was losing. Life is a way of folding pain into love so tightly, you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. Her mother survived, but the recovery was long. Emily was constantly traveling back and forth between cities. I helped when I could, took care of Maya, picked up Mia from school, tried to hold the pieces together. One afternoon, I got a call from her. She sounded exhausted. "Tom," she said, "I don't think I can do this anymore." "You mean with your mom?" "With everything." Her voice cracked. "I feel like I'm drowning in my own mistakes." I wanted to tell her it would be okay. That time heals. But the truth was, I didn't believe it anymore. Time doesn't heal. It just dulls the edges until you forget how deep the cut went. "Then let me help," I said instead. She hesitated. "You already are. That's what scares me." A few days later, Emily collapsed in the kitchen. Low blood sugar, the doctors said. Exhaustion. They kept her overnight for observation. I stayed at the apartment with Maya. It was the first time I'd ever been completely alone with her. That night, she woke crying. I picked her up, pacing the floor, whispering nonsense to calm her down. Her tiny fingers clutched my shirt, her cheek pressed against my neck. And I thought, if love had a sound, it would be this heartbeat against mine. When Emily came home the next day, she found me asleep on the couch, Maya curled up on my chest. She stood in the doorway for a long time before speaking. "You look like her real father," she said quietly. I opened my eyes. "Maybe love makes you one." Her lip trembled. "Tom, if something ever happens to me." "Don't," I said. "Nothing's going to happen." But she only smiled sadly. "Promise me you'll take care of her." It was a kind of promise that felt heavier than words. I nodded. "I promise." That was the last time I saw her smile. It happened on a gray Thursday. I had dropped Mia off at her grandmother's house and was on my way to Emily's apartment, carrying groceries for dinner. The streets were slick with rain, the sky heavy with clouds that felt like they'd been hanging there forever. I remember thinking how ordinary it all seemed, until nothing was ordinary ever again. I arrived at the apartment and found the door slightly ajar. My stomach dropped. Maya's blanket was on the floor, wet and crumpled. I called her name, my voice shaking. "Daddy!" Her small, frightened voice came from the bedroom. She was standing in her crib, tears streaking her tiny face, clutching the side as if it were the only thing keeping her safe. And then I saw Emily. She was lying on the floor, motionless, her hand resting limply on the kitchen counter. Blood pooled beneath her head. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The world seemed to slow, every sound muffled except for the scream in my own head. "Maya!" I shouted, running to the crib. I scooped her up and held her tightly. She cried, but she was alive. That's all that mattered. I called 911 with shaking hands, cradling Maya like she was the only reason I was still breathing. The operator's voice was calm, methodical, telling me what to do, but I barely heard her. When the paramedics arrived, I let them take Emily. She was alive, barely. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and rain, my arms around Maya like she was a shield against everything else. I spent the night in the hospital waiting room, cradling Maya, rocking her back and forth, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "You'll be okay, Maya. I'll make sure of it. I promise." I didn't stop, even when exhaustion threatened to pull me under, even when my own tears blurred the world around me. She needed me, and I would be enough. Emily survived, but she wasn't the same. Doctors said she'd had a fainting spell caused by exhaustion and low blood pressure. But I knew the truth. Life had mocked her, and every moment after that night carried a weight she couldn't shed. She stayed in the hospital for a few days, and I never left. I held Maya constantly, feeding her, soothing her, letting her nap on my chest while Emily slept in the next room. It was then I realized what my life had become. Not a husband, not a partner, not even a man with his own happiness. I was a protector, a caretaker, and for the first time, I understood the depth of the promise I had made. Weeks passed. Emily recovered slowly. She tried to return to her old routines, but something had shifted. Her laughter was quieter, her smiles more careful. And I understood there was no going back. But Maya thrived. She grew stronger every day, and every milestone she reached felt like a victory I had earned, even if I hadn't asked for it. And every night, when I held her and watched her sleep, I thought about the cost of love, the price of loyalty, and how sometimes protecting someone can hurt you more than losing them ever would. I kept my distance from Emily emotionally. I helped, I guided, I nurtured, but I never allowed myself to feel what I used to. That part of me had been buried the night I discovered her betrayal. But with Maya, it was different. I couldn't help but love her. One evening, as I tucked Maya into bed, she looked up at me with those clear blue eyes and whispered, "D-A-D-A." My throat tightened. I knelt beside her, holding her tiny hands. "I'll always be here, Maya," I said, "no matter what. I promise." And in that moment, I realized that promises aren't about love alone. They're about responsibility, sacrifice, and the willingness to keep standing even when everything else falls apart. Because sometimes that's all a broken man can give. Months had passed since that night in the hospital, and life had settled into a strange rhythm. Emily and I existed in the same apartment, same home for Maya, same shared responsibilities, but emotionally we were miles apart. I helped, I provided, I nurtured, but I didn't let her touch my heart. Not anymore. I had built walls stronger than any steel I'd ever known. She tried. Sometimes her eyes lingered on me with that same warmth I once craved. She smiled in ways that reminded me of everything I'd lost. But I couldn't go back. Not because I didn't love her. God, I still did. But because love without trust is nothing but pain in disguise. One Sunday, I took Maya to the park. Emily was inside, finishing paperwork. I watched her run across the grass, her curls bouncing as she laughed at some invisible joke, and I felt the ache in my chest, the one that never left. Mia was at her grandmother's, so it was just me and Maya. She toddled toward the swings, looking back to make sure I was following. "You pushed me, Daddy," she said with a grin. I laughed, my arms aching to lift her into the swing. She giggled, a sound that filled the air like music, and for a moment, the world didn't feel broken. But then I saw Emily at the window, watching, and everything shifted. The warmth of her presence, the memory of betrayal, and the impossible realization that I still wanted her all collided inside me. I looked away, because wanting her again didn't erase the past. It didn't erase the years of lies, the betrayal, or the knowledge that some things couldn't be undone. That night, after Maya had fallen asleep, Emily sat across from me at the kitchen table. Her eyes were weary, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "Do you regret staying?" she asked softly. I wanted to shout, to tell her how much I hated the position she put me in, how every day I spent raising another man's child felt like a quiet torture. But I didn't. "I don't know," I admitted. "Some days, yes, some days, no." She nodded. "I guess that's fair." We didn't speak for the rest of the night. Maya's soft breathing was the only sound in the apartment, and in that silence, I realized the truth. Some loves are never meant to be rekindled. Some people are never meant to be together again. And yet, some promises, like the ones I made to Maya, bind you forever. Weeks later, I found myself sitting in my car outside Emily's office building. She hadn't asked me to come, hadn't even expected me, but I was there anyway. Inside, I saw her laughing with a coworker. My stomach twisted. Daniel, it wasn't jealousy. Not exactly. It was a reminder that life moves on for everyone, but the people who stay behind carrying the wreckage. I drove away without stopping. The rain-streaked windshield blurred the world, and I let the tears fall freely. Somewhere deep inside, I knew, no matter how much I loved Emily, no matter how fiercely I loved Maya, I couldn't reclaim what I'd lost, and trying to would only destroy me completely. That night, I held Maya close in her bed. She clutched my shirt, her face pressed against my chest. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. I kissed her head, trying not to think about Emily, trying not to imagine her smiling at another man while I was the one holding the child she'd made. "I love you too, Maya," I said softly, and I knew, with a clarity that hurt, that this love, pure, untainted, fierce, was all I had left. It was a cold, gray morning when everything finally fell apart. Emily called me in a panic, her voice breaking in a way that made my chest tighten. "Tom, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I'm leaving." I didn't speak at first. I just listened to the catch in her breath, the finality in her words. "Where are you going?" I asked quietly. She hesitated. "Somewhere far. I need space. Away from all of this." My hands gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. All the careful balance we'd built, the fragile routine of shared weekends, meals, and laughter was about to crumble. "And Maya," I whispered, my voice tight. "I'll still see her," she said. "But it can't be like it was. Not anymore." I wanted to scream, to beg her to stay, to promise we could fix it, even though we both knew the truth. Some things can't be fixed. But the sound of her voice, strained and final, stole the words from me. The next days were a haze of packing, phone calls, and silent tension. Emily didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply moved through the apartment like a ghost of the life we used to have. I spent hours with Maya, reading to her, singing to her, holding her tightly. She didn't understand. She never would. But she felt the shift. Kids do. Even at 2 years old, she could sense the change in the air. The night before Emily left, I sat on the living room floor, cradling Maya in my arms, her tiny hands fisted in my shirt. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "No matter what, I'll always be here. Always." Emily came into the room silently. Her eyes were red, her expression guarded. "Tom," she said softly. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." I held Maya tighter, my voice breaking. "I know, but I can't be the man you need me to be anymore." She nodded. The understanding in her eyes felt heavier than words. Then she leaned down, brushing her lips briefly against Maya's forehead. A final kiss. A final act that felt like both surrender and release. And then she was gone. I remember standing at the window long after the cab drove off, watching Emily's figure disappear into the gray morning. The world was silent, indifferent, and I realized the full weight of what had happened. The love I carried for her, the hope I once clung to, the life we almost had, it was all gone. Maya stirred in my arms, sleepy and innocent, completely unaware of the loss we'd just endured. And in that moment, I understood something brutally clear. My life would now be defined by her, and her alone. I wasn't just raising another man's child. I was choosing her over the possibility of my own happiness, over the hope of reconciliation, over the life I might have had with the woman I still loved. Because some promises, like the one I made to Maya, cannot be broken, and some loves are too painful to hold, even when you never stop feeling them. That night, I sat on the floor, Maya asleep on my chest, the apartment quiet except for her soft breathing. I didn't cry. Not anymore. I just made a silent vow. No matter the heartbreak, no matter the years, no matter the emptiness that Emily's absence left behind, I would protect her. I would love her. I would carry the weight of this betrayal and turn it into something that mattered. Because sometimes love isn't enough. But responsibility, devotion, and presence, that could be enough. And for Maya, I would give everything I had. Years passed. Maya grew under my care, her blue eyes bright and curious, her laugh a constant reminder of why I stayed. I watched her first steps, first words, first day at school. Every milestone was a victory, every scrape a chance to soothe, every triumph a reason to celebrate. I wasn't her father by blood. I wasn't the man who had shared her mother's life before her. But I was a father in every way that mattered. And I was proud of it. Emily never returned. I heard from mutual friends that she had moved across the country, building a new life. A life I would never be part of. A life that belonged to her alone. Some nights, I let myself think about her. Her laugh, her touch, the way she looked at me before everything fell apart. And yes, I still loved her. But that love had transformed. It was no longer a hope or desire. It was a memory, a lesson, a wound that had shaped the man I had become. I stood on the porch one evening, Maya's hand in mine, watching the sunset over the quiet neighborhood. The sky was streaked with orange and purple, the air crisp with the coming winter. You'll always be there for me, right? Maya asked. Her small voice made my chest tighten. Always, I said. She smiled, a tiny dimple appearing in her cheek. And in that moment, I realized that even in a life marred by betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, there was beauty. There was purpose. There was love that didn't demand perfection, didn't require forgiveness, didn't hinge on the choices of others. I had given everything to her. My anger, my grief, my longing for what I lost. I set it aside and channeled it into her happiness. And in return, she had given me something I could never have imagined, a reason to keep standing. Some nights, I still dream of Emily, of what might have been. I wake up with her face in my mind and the ache of a life that can never be ours. But then I feel Maya curled against my chest, hear her soft breathing, and the ache fades into something else, resolve. Life doesn't always give second chances. It doesn't always reward love with reciprocity. But it gives us choices. And sometimes, the hardest, most heartbreaking choice is also the most meaningful one. I had loved, lost, and been betrayed. But I had also built. I had protected. I had chosen. And as I watched Maya run across the yard, laughing, her curls bouncing in the sun, I knew that the life I had chosen, painful, imperfect, and irrevocably mine, was enough. Because love isn't always about being with the one you want. Sometimes it's about giving everything you have to the ones who need you most. And in that truth, I finally found peace.